All right. So we are in Narada Bhakti Sutra, and last time we took up two aphorisms which said that a true devotee does not become anxious about any material loss or anxious about social responsibilities or public opinion because they have surrendered everything to God. But until one has reached such a state of complete surrender, one should continue to perform all their family and social responsibilities with a spirit of dedication, with a spirit of surrender to God. At the same time, keep on doing all the spiritual sadhanas. Next two aphorisms, aphorisms 63 and 64, are about what a devotee should refrain from, what a devotee should be careful about. Okay, aphorism 63. Stri dhana nastika charitram na shravaniyam. Let's read it together. Stri dhana nastika charitram na shravaniyam. Na means one should not. Shravaniyam, listen to topic that are related to stri, that is sex, dhana, wealth, and nastika charitram, atheistic people. One should not listen to topic that are related to sex, wealth, and atheistic people. So let us try to break it down. Why Narada is saying like this. So at the face of it, this aphorism might appear to be regressive, and also literal translation, if we take, stri means women. So a devotee should not hear about women, wealth, or people of atheistic nature. So it may appear to be misogynist too. Is it about against women? So we have to contextualize the aphorism. So this was written at a time only when men were reading these texts in various schools, and Gurukula system. Mostly men were reading these sutras, these aphorisms. So women is mentioned here. The idea is not to hear about sex, not to indulge in lust. So hearing about wealth, lusty stories have their effects in our mind. We all know that they create powerful impressions. Among all the impressions, these are the most powerful impressions. And they might consume our time and energy if we are not careful about. Sri Ramakrishna, we see that in gospel, very often he used to tell the male devotees to keep a respectable distance from the women. And to women devotees, he used to say, keep respectable distance from men. The idea is, at that context, in cultural context, it meant that that respectable distance, if we don't keep, then there is a chance of getting involved into unwanted affairs or romantic affairs, because it is so powerful, it is built into our nature. And what he suggested, rather, to the male devotees that try to see each woman as manifestation of Shakti, manifestation of Divine Mother. So sublimate the natural tendency that we have for the opposite sex, try to sublimate with this with the idea of they are nothing but manifestation of Divine Mother. Similarly, for wealth, hearing too much about wealth will rouse a desire in our mind to acquire more wealth, more than we need. And this aphorism says that not only not indulging in them, but a aspirant devotee should not hear about them. So what does it mean? Hearing here means that, as we remember, Bhagavad Gita says that dhyato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu upajayate. The more we are exposed to these ideas, we listen or we read, we watch, then slowly, gradually, we are attracted to them. A desire are created in our mind. So if I whole day look about or watch about stock market, so naturally what will be the result? That my mind will try to dwell upon stock market. Okay. So it is one thing to invest and invest carefully, and but another thing to spend unnecessary amount of time in these areas which can consume too much of our energy. That is why Narada says, do not hear about. So hear about does not literally mean hear about. Hear about means don't let your mind dwell upon so much the idea of sex, lust, things that will create more lust in your mind, and things which will create more desire for wealth in your mind. Because as a devotee, as we have been seeing, Narada is trying to say that devotion is a full-time job, and our time and energy is not infinite. We have limited time, limited energy. The more we spend on those things, wealth and lust and carnal desire, the less time and energy we shall have for spiritual pursuits. So that is the idea behind this. And this advice is not for all. This is for one who is trying to cultivate bhakti, especially at the beginning stage, at the stage of the beginners. As Sri Ramakrishna gives the example, when it is a sapling, it has to be protected. But when it grows into a tree, then these things won't be able to affect the mind. But for a beginner, and another Bhakti Sutra was written with the idea that it is an introduction to a beginner who is just has started their journey in the path of Bhakti Yoga. So Narada is taking all the measures or cautioning us that what one should avoid for only for bhakta, not for all. Then, um, what about atheist? What about atheist? He says that one should not hear about atheistic people. That is, should not read things written by atheistic people. That is, all the ideas about all the atheistic ideas which are against religion, against God. Why it is so? Why it is so? Is it regressive or parochial? Let me give one concrete example. You know, one of the greatest materialists in our time who is very vocal against religion and God is Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins, a biologist from London. So he wrote a book a few years ago which became very popular. called God Delusion, the God Delusion. And I read that book, seeing his reviews, rave reviews about the book. So if we read the book, we find that Richard Dawkins put some ideas are very convincing and arguments against the existence of God. But here is a catch. The catch is he is against only one type of God, that is the God of heaven. And that is his whole idea about God. He was born into a Christian family, and from the very childhood, he desisted the idea of a God who is all powerful and who is sitting in heaven and judging, you know, us, giving judgments to our activities. This idea was so appalling to him, and he went on to become a materialist and writing vigorously against God. But his idea of God was very much shaped by his upbringing and culture. If we read the book, those of us who have, all of us who have exposure to Vedanta, the idea of Vedantic God, we shall find that the God he is up against is not at all the God Vedanta is speaking about. Now, who does not have this kind of exposure? In their mind, this kind of book can create confusion. Confusion. Until we have some degree of maturity and we have cultivated our bhakti to some extent and we have progressed in our spiritual path, this kind of book, materialistic book or atheistic book, create confusion in the mind of a aspirant bhakta. That is why Narada says this kind of books should be avoided. And now the question may be asked, is it possible to keep away from such topic or discussion? The answer is no, it is not totally possible to keep away. Sometimes we are in the midst of in a conversation when these things come, when we cannot avoid it. But the idea is to, as much as we can, avoid from such things. Better it will be for the growth of our bhakti. And we have to understand it in that light, how much we can tolerate and how much is actually acting against our cultivation of bhakti, against practice of bhakti. So that is a caution. The summary of this aphorism is, for the cultivation of bhakti, an aspirant should avoid as much as possible reading, hearing, watching things that increase their desire for lust and wealth. And they should avoid reading books written against spirituality or religion. This is this aphorism. It should be seen in that light. So it is not a regressive, put into proper and it is not anti-woman. Next aphorism, 64. These are also something that a devotee should restrain from or should keep their distance from, should be careful about, mindful about. Abhimana dambha adhikam tyajyam. Let's read it together. Abhimana dambha adhikam tyajyam. Abhimana means pride. Dambha means arrogance. Adhikam means and such other things. Tyajyam should be given up. Pride, arrogance, and such other things should be given up. By whom? By an aspirant devotee. So, and such other things might mean any other thing that takes us away from God, such as jealousy. So, this negative traits in our mind which can take us away from God. So, pride means egotism. Egotism. That is, for example, I am a great artist. I am so rich. I am so learned. This kind of egoistic identities. This is called pride. And arrogance means haughtiness. Haughtiness. That is exaggeration of one's capabilities and accomplishments. These pride, arrogance are, in fact, if we analyze, what are they? They are, in Sanskrit, they are called upadhis. That is, they are incidental things that has come upon us, that have come upon us. I might not have been fortunate enough to have them. And the idea here is the more I identify myself with these incidental things, incidental accomplishments, and other secondary things like wealth and education, the more I am going away from my true nature. So they blur the vision of reality, reality of our true nature. So these are all upadhis, attributes. The more we emphasize or stress their existence, or the more we identify with these secondary things, the more we are away from our true nature as spirit. That is why we see that they always in scriptures, in all the Vedantic textbooks, these things are told to be taken care of. In reality, if we see, there are always people who have more capabilities, more success, and more accomplishments than me. So, can I be then so proud of my abilities, accomplishments? We see sometimes people, they are, puffed up. Their ego is puffed up with their tiny little things that intelligence or education or wealth or accomplishment. But in the scheme of in the big picture, there are so many people who are more talented than them, more educated than them, and have more accomplishment them from them. And if we are puffed up with these little things, then we become, kind of center of the universe. We become the center of the universe. We totally be blind to the fact that there are so many people who have more capabilities or more talents than what I am boasting about. So that is blurring our vision from reality. So pride, arrogance, jealousy is not good even in our day-to-day life. More so, it is in spiritual life for a bhakta. In this respect, we have to remember that there could be healthy pride. Okay, healthy pride means based on reality, realistic. I know that I am good at certain things and I am weak at certain things. And to be aware of our weakness, our strength, that is a healthy pride. And we don't have to boast about that. Those who are aware, those who have a healthy pride, they don't boast about that, or those ideas are not uppermost in their mind. And against that, what there is a hubristic pride, hubristic, which is unrealistic pride. We see
what we are seeing now, the war in Ukraine, it is the result of one man's hubristic pride, unrealistic pride, one person's. Okay, so that is Abhimana and Dambha, haughtiness, arrogance. And if we look at closely, in all religions, arrogance and pride have been so much denounced. For example, Jesus says, God opposes the pride, God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. Grace to the humble. So everywhere we see that for a spiritual seeker, pride and arrogance are two negative traits that have to be renounced, given up. Now the question is why? Can you try to answer why? How it is related to um, spiritual life? Pride, arrogance, why? How it hampers a devotee's life? Pride and arrogance. Can you try to? If we try to, okay, let's see. Answer start takes away our focus on the divine, takes away our focus from the divine. Okay, we get attached to more false identities. True, true, true. Anymore? Increase our ego, sense of being, mind and body. Right? Right? Any other attempt? They are demonic qualities, Pargita. That is also true. They are demonic qualities. Okay. Actually, we'll have to give up the eye of the ego in order to be one with divinity. Good. This is it, it distracts from God realization. Good. With this quality, world pulls them towards it. Good. Good. And okay, I am looking for an answer which is based upon Narada Bhakti Sutra. Let's see how many people can remember that. This egoism is what makes us separate from the divine. Yes, it is very close, very close. Is there a spot on answer? Because Narada mentioned it earlier. A hint on the chapter why bhakti is easier or bhakti is divine love does not come. Yes, yes, yes. All right. All right. So it was aphorism 27. When Narada was telling that why bhakti is superior to other paths. There he says, aphorism 27, Ishwarasopi abhimana deshitvat daino priyotvat cha. God is averse to pride and fond of humility. Abhimana, the same word, pride. And in that context, you may remember we talked about two types of egos. Can anybody remember two types of egos? Should I unmute? Okay. Try to answer. Okay. Yes, ripe and unripe. Good. Ripe and unripe ego. So ripe ego is God-centric identity. I am a devotee of God. I am an instrument of God. I am a friend of God. I am a lover of God. I am related to God. This kind of God-centric identity is ripe ego. Unripe ego, which separates us from God. How? Through attributes. Because all these attributes that I am imposing on myself related to our worldly identities. So it is taking me away from God. And God loves humility. Humility means to a from a surrender to God, an awareness that I am instrument through which God alone works. Humility does not mean a sense of worthlessness or does not mean lack of self-esteem. It does not also mean that a showy humility, but it means a real awareness that we are instrument through which God alone works. Incidentally, I am reading a book which takes the examines the life of some great people of the world. Artists, painters, and from different walks of life who excelled. And recently, I read about John Keats, the poet John Keats, British poet, and he said he realized after much struggle, this he used to tell that real poetry comes from God. The moment I have stopped writing poetry, my real poems came. So he said, the moment I stopped writing poetry, all my poems took a different level. And actually, the scholars, the critics say so that John Keats' best poems are those poems which he claims to that he did not write them. Okay, his agency was given. He said he even went on to say that that is not poetry at all, which is composed by someone. If someone thinks that I will write a poem, it is not a poem going to be poem at all. Okay, it has to be worked through you, worked out through you by a divine hand. And incidentally, again, I was talking to a writer yesterday. He is an accomplished writer and wrote several famous books, best-selling books. I was talking to him over phone. He told me that he has firm belief that he himself has not written the books. He has been instrument of God. So what is going on here? What is going on here? Is he not writing the books at all? He is not doing the things. He is not making all the hard work. Yes, this is the paradox. They are doing all the hard work. They are planning. They are doing the real work. But with that coming the increasing feeling that it is they are just the instrument of God. I asked the author, the writer, why are you telling so? Then he went on to give me examples after examples how many things fell in place to make the books happen, in which many of them were very miraculous and which he could not have explained how it happened. Okay, so he thinks that not only thinks, he really feels. I could get a I could get a sense of that he feels that he has a firm awareness that he is instrument of God. He has a healthy pride that he has written these books which were necessary, but at the same time, he has the humility that all of them have come through the grace of God. So this is what Narada says that Ishwarasya Abhimano Deshitvat Daino Priyatatcha. So, and this pride and ego inhibits intimacy. In our day-to-day relationship, two lovers, if there is ego and pride playing between them, so relationship won't be that intimate. If pride and ego comes into play. In the same way, the more pride we have with relation to ourselves, to that extent, we won't be intimate to God. So, meekness and humility allow one to come closer to God. That is why pride and arrogance need to be given up. That is what Narada is telling us. Now, the question is how we can give up pride, arrogance, jealousy, things like that. Is it easy to do that? Can I say, let me drop pride, arrogance from me? Can it go away with that? No, it cannot. There are several ways of doing that. There is no one way, but a devotee's way of doing that, what a devotee can do about that. That was hinted, that was told by Sri Krishna to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 8 to 12. After saying that all this manifestation is nothing but God. It's God alone who has become entire manifestation. He becomes explicit about that so that Arjuna can appreciate God or divinity in day-to-day affairs. He says, especially two verses, verse 9 and verse 10, 7.9, 7.10. He says, Punno gandha prithivyam cha tejah cha asmi vibhavasau jivanam sarvabhuteshu tapaschasmi tapastishu. So last two words, tapaschasmi tapastishu, that is, among those human beings, those who have grit, perseverance, and who have great degree of self-discipline through which they accomplish great thing. In them, that grit, that self-effort, those are me alone, me alone. That hard work, that penance people do to accomplish great things, that's a great quality, divine quality. And that is how you will recognize me, because it is recognized easier, the great qualities that stands out. So he says, how you will find in creation. He says, whenever you see this grit in people, hard work, and we see that nothing great can be achieved without grit or hard work or perseverance. Sri Krishna says that try to see that as divine. In the next verse, he says, Buddhi buddhimata maspi tejaha tejasvi namaham. So I am the very intelligent principle among the intelligent people. So there are people of extraordinary intelligence. Their glory is because of their intelligence, and that intelligence has come from God. Similarly, the boldness, the valor in bold people, for which they can overcome obstacles, that valor, that teja, that power, these are divine. So corollaries of these verses are that, number one, appreciation, humility, that if I have got any of these virtues, like these are not exhaustive, but just a list, such as boldness, intelligence, and perseverance, hard work, then I should remember that they really do not belong to me. They are manifestation of God. And the credit does not come to go to me, but all the credit goes to God. That makes the devotee humble, real humble. Second, all the name and fame that we can get from our capabilities, our talents, they are also from God. So we should be feel grateful to God if we have these capabilities, these qualities. And third, if we can appreciate these qualities in others instead of being jealous of others if they have these qualities, we can appreciate that it is God's qualities among in others. This is what a devotee can do. That pride, arrogance, these won't go on their own jealousy, but things we are proud of, things which make us haughty. A devotee can always think that these are great gift from God, great gift from God. We have been gifted, and how best we can utilize it, not only for me, but for benefit of others. The book that I was referring to is also speaks about the same thing, the great work of your life, written by Stephen Cope. And this book is also about, he takes up Bhagavad Gita's principle of sadharma. And he says sadharma is understanding our calling. Calling means the gift that we have, the gift we have got from God, and how to recognize it, nurture it, give our life towards it, and how to make it a way to serve greater number of people, you know, in serving others. Okay, so the gift that we are talking about, that all the qualities that we have got, a devotee can think that they have come from God. In that way, they don't have to deal with pride, arrogance, jealousy directly, but the root of their, it will be given a total different direction, that all these things are nothing but gift from God. Whatever sense we have about God, whatever idea we have about the divinity, it has come from that source. And let's admit we all have these traits in us in varying degrees, so we need not be hard on ourselves for having them. And our effort to overcome them should be considered a work in progress, right? A work in progress. We are trying to. And Narada is pointing to that direction only. And in the next aphorism, he will give another way of how to channel even these negative traits towards God. Even the negative traits, he will be saying, can be all diverted to God, can all be connected with God, so that these negative traits themselves become a force to connect with God. That we shall see later on. Okay. Did I see any question? Is dispassion and detachment beyond humility? Dispassion and detachment makes us humble, makes us humble. It is not beyond humility, that is, but it goes with humility. Okay. Yes. Any other question, thoughts, ideas? You can unmute or ask the question, or share anything you would like to share.
Swami,
Yes.
Victoria. The verse that we chanted, it says, in that space within the heart resides the great flaming fire, undecaying, all-knowing, with tongues spread out in all directions. And it said something like consuming all that enters and changing it into itself. So when we bring these things to God, like verse 65 is going to say that we should devote all actions to God and direct lust, anger, and pride towards Him only. When we're in the midst of meditation and we're at that point where we're trying to find that one pointed, one focused attention on the center, and this verse is really relevant at that time. What it's saying, it sounds to me, is that if you bring those things to that point, that it will consume those negative things. Is that what you understand then?
Yes, it's a very good point you have raised. You know, during meditation, one great challenge remains to us how to tune out other thoughts and focus to the desired object, desired symbol, desired sound, whatever.
Mhm.
Instead of fighting those distracting ideas, one great thing that I have found is let all those ideas or distractions, thoughts that are coming, let's not fight them. Let's think that all these ideas, thoughts, and images, sounds are divine in themselves, coming from God itself. Okay. In all of them, actually, God is present.
Mhm.
So then we'll see that we don't have to fight those ideas, distraction, because in and through all of them is running a common thread that is divine. Okay. We are not recognizing them and we are trying to turn away from them and rather trying to focus our attention to a particular concept of God that we have. But in ultimate analysis, even from a devotional perspective or a non-dualistic perspective, all these ideas, thoughts are where they are coming from the same source, right? Where the good thoughts are also coming from.
Mhm.
So if we can be aware of that, we can let those ideas come. You know, I like to think like I am standing on a river bed and all those ideas are flowing by me like river water, and the source is all God itself. Then I find that it becomes much more easier to quieten our mind and direct our mind to where we want to direct to. Okay. And some days mind is really very much racing and we find it really hard to even get to the point when we can really focus on what we want to. So at that time, this type of thoughts that let all the thoughts, ideas, images, let come and merge into the center where God is residing. And those ideas, images, and sounds are also from God alone. So where God is not, those ideas in them also God is present. Okay.
Mhm.
So that I think that that's a very very helpful spiritual practice. Helpful spiritual practice.
Thank you.
Yes. Anyone else?
Yeah, Maharaj, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Maharaj, it's such a profound and good point is that our unripe worldly, this vanity and